Hi and welcome. My name is Rebecca. I am a first-year medical student and I'm passionate about helping students develop study structures that work for them and help optimize their studying. This video marks the first of several videos that I hope to make in a long series that will go over how to create certain structures and systems in student studying that is backed by science. If you ever sit down and you don't know what to study, this is the video for you. Let's first talk about why we need structure when we sit down and we study. Learning is actually a highly organized process. And when you look at the physiology of how we learn, we can really break it up into three distinct phases. We learn through encoding, consolidation, and retrieval. Now, it doesn't matter what type of brain you have, whether that be maybe a more neurodivergent or a more neurotypical brain, it doesn't matter. This is just our brain's basic physiology and how we learn. Today, I want to focus on that middle one, consolidation. Now, consolidation is essentially just committing long things to long-term memory. And how we do that is through connections. Dr. Efrat First, who I'll link below, is an amazing researcher in this field who has some incredible visualizations of how this process actually works. Essentially, we always start with a single isolated bit of knowledge. That could be a random fact that you learned, such as the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. We start with that one singular fact, and over time, through repetition, through spaced repetition specifically, we start to build on that one singular bit of knowledge and expand it into a larger neural network. And the larger we can make that neural network, the stronger that one tidbit of information becomes, because we've bridged this new information to old information by drawing connections in our neural network. And that is what consolidation is. The framework I'm teaching you today is called the RSA Method, and it stands for Review, Solidify, Apply. The amazing thing about this framework is that it doesn't matter what your favorite study techniques, it doesn't matter how your brain is structured or how you learn. It's a basic framework that you can manipulate, that you can make your own, but it follows that basic premise, that basic physiology of our brain, so that it will accommodate all learners. So let's dive into an example. So let's say that I'm a first-year biology student and I am in Bio 107. That's the course that I'm in. In this course, I'm learning specifically about prokaryotes and eukaryotes right now. When I sit down and study, I'm going to take the first 2 minutes of that study session to map out what I'm going to study using the RSA method. So starting with review. I'm a big flashcard fan. I love flashcards. So that's how I'm going to review that material. I'm going to go through my Anki deck. I'm going to review past cards that are due and that maybe I've been struggling with. I'm going to maybe see some new material in those cards as well. I could also do things like active recall. I could do a brain dump. There's a lot of ways that I'm reviewing, just priming my brain, warming up my brain, just like you'd be warming up your muscles before you go on a long run. The next step is solidify. And this is where I choose one intentional thing I'm going to study. Remember, this is me pre-planning before I've even started studying. I'm mapping this out. When I'm choosing my one intentional thing I'm going to study, I want you to take a second to think about what am I struggling with. As a Bio 107 student, okay, I'm struggling with prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Let's go a little bit deeper. What about prokaryotes and eukaryotes? Well, I'm really struggling with the difference between them. Okay, what about the difference? Okay, I'm struggling with the difference between their genetic material. Okay, great. That's the one intentional thing that I'm going to be focusing on today. Now that I know what I'm intentionally going to study, this is where I get to decide how I'm going to study this. How am I going to consolidate this learning? That could look very different for many different learners. For me, I really enjoy mind mapping. I enjoy maybe a small strategic summarization from my lecture notes. I could also be creating flashcards and creating really intentional, thought-provoking, question-based flashcards that are stretching my understanding of that lecture material as I'm forming those flashcards. Whatever that looks like to you, but what I'm trying to do is get a good grasp on that understanding so when I leave that study session, I can confidently say, I know the differences between a prokaryotes and eukaryotes genetic material. And this leads into the last step of the RSA method, which is apply. Practice testing is one of the most effective ways that students can learn because it challenges our understanding of topics, and it actually goes even farther than that and is one of the best ways to strengthen those neural connections in our brain. Because again, consolidation is this connection bridge between old and new information, and practice testing challenges those connections. So every single study session I'm doing, I'm ending it with a little bit of practice testing. This could even just be 2 to 5 minutes, a couple questions here or there. For me, I really like using AI. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to quiz me on a few things, maybe ask to interrogate me. I might do some elaborative interrogation. I could be looking at a question bank. I could be coming up with my own questions too. But always end your session with that little bit of apply, because if I do notice a gap in my understanding, that's it. Now I have my next intentional Solidify topic for tomorrow. So this brings me to my point. When you sit down and study, essentially you're consolidating. You're taking that new knowledge that you learned in lecture and you want to bridge it to your pre-existing knowledge so that it's committed to that long-term memory and it's going to stay in that long-term memory, easy for you to retrieve. And this is how you're going to structure your studying. You're going to start with a review period where you're priming your brain and you're kind of activating that old information, warming it up per se. You're gonna move to a solidify stage where now you're gonna be bridging that new information to the old information and really working on developing that long-term memory formation. And then the third and final thing you're always going to do is apply that knowledge, test those neural connections that you think you've made, and see if there's any gaps in your understanding, which can then inform what you're gonna be doing tomorrow for studying. So that's it. That's the RSA method. So what I challenge all you to do this week is when you sit down and study, think RSA. How am I going to review this topic? How am I going to solidify this topic? And then how am I going to apply this topic? And if you can follow that basic framework in your studying, you're going to be taking your studying from something unintentional, unorganized, and unstructured to something that's going to be highly organized, highly intentional, and efficient as well. And you're going to become a more competent and capable learner just like that. Let me know how the RSA method goes. I'm really excited to hear how this works for students, and maybe tell me some of the techniques that you're using within the review, solidify, and apply portions of this method. Thanks for watching.